Hey, what's up guys? Fish Tank Mike here. Today we are finally going to be tearing down the old Avatar tank. It is well past its prime. Here's what it looked like when we set it up. I don't even know how long ago this was. Probably close to a year at this point. So as you can see, there's moss everywhere. It's very much overgrown. We're going to take this out. We're going to save a ton of it so we can use it for some other scapes. But what we're going to do today is try and make a new aquascape that is a lot more bright and colorful, something that really stands out. So with that said, let's go ahead and start taking pieces out of here, save some of the moss, and then ultimately move the fish so we can really get going. Alright guys, so I think I have everything where I want it. We got our big pile of used aquascape stuff here. Everything's cleared out except for, a few of the plants that we are going to reuse. So the dwarf hairgrass and some of the other random things that are still in the foreground. We do still have the shrimp in here, and we're going to leave them in. They're going to be just fine throughout this process, so we'll leave a little bit of extra water for them. I really want to mound up the two sides of the aquarium with some more substrate, so we need to first go ahead and make an adjustment to our canister filter inlet here and shorten it up a little bit. We have a huge mess down here we're going to clean up, but filtration on this aquarium is an AQUAPROS FiltoSmart Thermo 200, just in case you're wondering. It's got a built-in heater that we're actually not using because we don't need to heat these tanks down here. But it's definitely a nice feature to have, especially in the wintertime when it does get a little bit colder down here. All we have to do to adjust this inlet is go ahead and make a cut in the acrylic tubing a little bit higher up and then attach the filter inlet bottom part back onto it. I highly recommend these AQUAPROS canister filters, both the FiltoSmart and the Biomaster versions. The Biomaster version is just a little bit larger relative to the FiltoSmarts, but even this 200 works really well on my 40-gallon aquariums. I run these on all three of the tanks in the fish room. We're going to be using UN Contra Soil as our active substrate, guys, and I believe we have two different granule sizes here. This looks a little bit smaller, and it's going to go ahead and match the stuff that we already have in here. I want to try and create a really dramatic scape today, and so we definitely need the height on either side, left and right, to help try and achieve that. You'll see a little bit more here once we start adding in some more hardscape. So for today's scape, you can already see we're going to be using Dragonstone as the main hardscape, alright? So I already have a few pieces in here. I'm just kind of playing around at this point. I want to get a feel for like a two-sided kind of pointy Dragonstone hardscape, and so this is going to take me a while. I need to go back and forth. I need to swap out a lot of pieces until I feel like I have a pretty good skeleton for the scape. While I'm doing this, I just want to make sure that I keep kind of the center here open because we're going to eventually do a nice little path. One thing to keep in mind when you're placing rocks, especially on something like an active substrate that we're using, is that the rocks are going to kind of sink down into it. This type of substrate is always going to try and move out of the way, and so what we're going to do to help preserve the height of some of these rocks is just put a nice, just random stone underneath them, and hopefully that'll prevent it from sinking down so much. After thinking about it for a little while, I decided to abandon the two-sided aquascape and go with something that felt a little bit more organic. So I took everything out, shifted the substrate over, and then started fresh again. We're not quite done with the hardscape yet, guys, but I want to start playing around with some plant placement to maybe help me get a little bit more inspired. One of the main plants we're going to use today is Monte Carlo from the old Ancient Gardens tank. So if we just grab a chunk of this, you can see we have a lot to work with here. There's a little bit of cyano on this stuff, but I don't think it'll take hold in the new tank. We're going to risk that. So let's go ahead and let's grab this giant mat here and see what we can come up with. it's actually now the next day, guys. I skipped all of the planting that you see here because it was just kind of a nightmare, right? So the Monte Carlo is very difficult to plant, especially when it doesn't have a good root system. Sometimes when you get it out of the pot, it does have a good little root ball that you can get down in there, but this stuff has been growing over the trees in ancient gardens for so long that it's just a mat, and so it can be very difficult to plant. If you zoom down here, you know, I just did my best, tried to tuck in some of the ends down there, even sprinkled some substrate onto parts of some of the tops, and we'll just have to see how this goes. The obvious workaround to this is to just do a dry start, but again, we have the shrimp in here. I didn't want to take them out. I want to get the fish back into this aquarium as soon as possible, so I didn't want to have to wait like a month or two for a really good dry start to happen. But if this Monte Carlo doesn't take very well, we might have to consider doing that. I'm just kind of impatient about it right now. So look, we're not done with the planting. We're going to finish that off here in just a second. We got the serene backlight back up there where it should be, not down here on the ground. But we're going to go ahead and actually switch up the lighting. We're going to get a big upgrade here with the brand new ONF Flat 1 Plus. It's essentially the newer version of this exact light that we have here. We did a video on it recently. Go check that out if you want to learn all about this light and see an overview of it. This new version, the Plus, has a couple of different new features that make it really awesome. The first being that it integrates with the better version of the app, the timered version. So you get to use the same app that controls your Flat Nano if you happen to have one of those lights, and it gives you a lot better controllability as far as the light timer goes. You can create a much better 24/7 daytime mode or whatever you want to call it, and that's exactly what we're going to do here on this tank. It also has a much better color spectrum relative to freshwater tanks, so you're going to be able to tweak that and not be stuck with just the white or blue lights that the old version had. Ultimately, the result of the colorful RGBs that this light uses is going to be a much better color rendition in the tank. So greens are going to be greener, reds are going to be redder, and you're going to get the ability to really pull the maximum color potential out of your plants. And you know, if you happen to be somebody that doesn't like to mess around with a bunch of apps for your fish tanks, you still have really good manual controls on the side to adjust the brightness as well as that color temperature. So no need for the app if you don't want to use it. If you guys are interested in the ONF Flat 1 Plus and you want to learn a little bit more about it, there's a link at the top of the description. Check that out, and we got to give a big thanks to ONF for sending me out these lights and giving them a shot. So far, I really like them. Super high end. They look really good. These are premium lights, so they do have a premium price tag. They are definitely worth it, though. I will say, you know, compare this to something like an ADA light that would cost you around $800. I think these are definitely worth it. Anyway, guys, let's get back to finishing up the tank. We got to add in a few more plants. We have some Rotalas and maybe one more Blixa hiding in the tank next door that we can put in, and then we're going to finish it off with a really nice path, and I'm looking forward to that because I think it's really going to make this scape pop. Now that we have all the plants in, guys, we're getting pretty close to being done here. Something I do want to say about the scape is that, you know, while we did put in quite a few stem plants in the back, you can't really see them. You can see some of them over here on the left side, some of the taller ones we had. I chopped a lot of the Rotalas down really low, and I think it'll be fun just to watch them grow. We will have to wait a little bit longer to see them get up to the top of the tank, but we'll be able to see more of their full growth or their actual growth in a submerged form. These plants came in with the immersed growth, so they need to pretty much melt off and restart anyway. We should get a lot of really nice red color pop from those plants specifically, and maybe even the Blixas that we have sprinkled around the front here. I took a few more pieces of the Monte Carlo and kind of just wedged it in between some of the cracks in the Dragonstone, and I think that overall kind of gives it a little bit of a better look. Not to mention, over time, it's going to grow over the rock, and I think that's going to look pretty sweet. Now that it's getting a little bit later in the day, we've shifted over and we have a little bit of a different color temperature in the tank now as a result of the settings on the ONF light. So I had a warmer temperature in the morning, then as it moves into the daytime, which we're in now, it gets closer to that 6500K, that more white, and then in the evening for about an hour and a half, it'll get back to that sort of warmer temperature feel. Now I think it's time we finish up here with the path. So we're going to start by siphoning out a little bit of the active substrate where we want to eventually put in the sand path. So it's going to be down the middle here, and then I want to have another path veer off to the left. Once we get a fair amount of the substrate removed, we don't have to get all of it, but then we're going to add in some sand, and instead of just grabbing like a handful and pouring it directly into the tank, that's no good. That's going to spread it all everywhere. We want to do a controlled pour. So what I'm going to do is grab a piece of PVC pipe that's attached to a funnel. This way I can scoop the sand into the funnel, put the PVC pipe in the tank, and then it's going to be a targeted dump right where I want this stuff. Alright guys, well our path is done. I ended up doing a 3-prong path with the left one over here. I really like this one, how it goes up a little bit. It has the most height. That helps with the depth, and pair that with the fact that we have these smaller rocks back here. I think it looks pretty good. Now we just have to sit back and let the plants do their thing. Hopefully the Monte Carlo is going to be able to get some good growth in this tank. So in order to do that, we have of course CO2 in the back there with our little diffuser. I'll have links to what we're using for CO2 in the description if you want to learn more about that. And I think with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put the fish in, but I'm going to do that here after the video's up. Thanks for hanging out with me today and checking out the new scape. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have a name for this aquarium, please drop it down there as well. I have no idea what I'm going to end up calling this. I'll probably just end up calling it something dumb like I do most of the time. So give me some good help. I want to call this thing something fun. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.